that.
Hello,
Yeah.
councillors, staff. We'll kick off with the meeting here tonight. First, I acknowledge the Wiradjuri people, the traditional custodians of the lands at which we meet. The meeting is held and pays its respect to elders, both past and present, of the Wiradjuri Nation, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal people who are present. As you know, we won't have a public forum tonight, so I don't have to close the meeting. We'll just go on with the meeting. There's no apologies, is there? Disclosure of interest. Anyone disclosure of interest? Confirmation of the minutes of last meeting. Is any questions on the minutes of the last meeting? I've got moved. Councillor Graham, seconded Councillor Sheehan. All in favour? Aye. Now, move to page 34.
You want to do the financial?
We might. I've got to move here in David Graham a second with Penny Nicholson. We might go on and do the financials. We've got the Brad Bowen from Crow Auditors on the line. So if everyone's happy, we might go and do that first. No issues in Cooter, is there?
No.
So if you move along to page 67, I've just got to check. We got you there, Brad?
Yes. Yep. I can hear you.
Righto, mate. Councillors, Brad Bowen, he's from the auditors from Crow Auditors. It's going to speak tonight on the audit and take any questions. So, Brad, without further ado, mate, I'll let you go through it for us. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for the opportunity to join Council. Fundamentally, what we're going through tonight is your 30 June 2019 financial statements. Council would be aware that we obtained an extension from the OLG to get them lodged, and ultimately they were signed and lodged on the 28th of February, which was inside the deadline that we had. So from a compliance perspective, albeit that they were done towards the end of February, because they were done consistent with the extension the OLG granted, they're considered on-time lodgement. The key item that gets shared is a audit opinion, and it's pretty much a commodity-based item. There are really two outcomes. You either get a clean audit opinion, or you get a or you get a qualified one. The goal at the outset is to get a clean or an unqualified audit opinion, and that's what we got. In addition, in New South Wales local government, you get this thing called a conduct report. And the format of the conduct report has been consistent for the past few years, and there's a high level of commonality now that the New South Wales Audit Office does the audit for all 128 councils in New South Wales. 2019 was our first time in as being the auditor for Cootamundra-Gundagai, and so working together with predominantly Tim Swan in the finance team. At the end of the process, we've issued this conduct report, which is part of the publicly available financial statements. If I just step you through the conduct report in some high-level snapshots, the operating result for a year was a surplus of 4.3 million, and in the prior year it was a deficit of 7.1. The main difference was some additional grant funding during the year. We got some stronger communities funding and some additional capital grant funding. And then also some additional RMS fees during the year. So those three things combined really drove the year-on-year result when trying to line them up and look at them. The other metric that the OLG and T Corp were probably tracking once upon a time in this fit for the future scenario was what was your operating result if they backed out the capital grants. And for Cootamundra-Gundagai, that was still in the negative, not quite a positive, but only negative 2.9 in 2019. It was closer to negative 10 million in the prior year. Your rates and annual charges more or less moved consistent with the rate peg of about 2.3%. So there was really, you're not in a special rate variation. So really it was as expected. Most of the activity for Cootamundra-Gundagai was in the space of the the grants, and the main one being that Stronger Communities funding of $3.5 million. In terms of some of your primary statements, the main item there is that you generate cash from your operations and then you spend it or invest it on investing activities. Two main things: property, plant and equipment, and for you, predominantly that's road infrastructure. You're spending a significant amount of money on maintaining the road network in an existing state, and any surplus cash is usually invested by way of term deposit. You've got very little borrowings relative to council's overall size. So the graphic there shows the deep purple is cash flows from operations, the pink is spending it on investing, and a very small allocation of cash is going towards debt repayment, because council essentially carries only around $2.6 million worth of debt for your overall size, which is fairly small if you roll that across your peers. Right here and now, for most businesses, cash is king in this coronavirus outbreak. If we went to council at the end of 2019, you had 27 million in cash and cash equivalents, so that's quite a healthy level. What happens there, though, is you've got things like external restrictions. This is water and sewer, so those funds need to be spent on what they're raised for. Some internal restrictions, which is grant funds or projects that you may have set funds aside from. And then discretionary spending of council comes down to unrestricted. And so for council, that improved a bit this year versus the prior year, and you've got unrestricted cash of around 3.3 million. So that would indicate that you can pay your debts as and when they fall due. Council's carrying a relatively low level of debt. The performance ratios, which come from about note 18 in your financial statements, these are captured in here with some brief comments alongside them. The operating performance ratio, this is consistent with a lot of amalgamation councils where the funding that came through in the early years wasn't necessarily spent as we were geared up to deliver these projects and via our project office. As that spending is coming through now, we're seeing that hit on the expense side of the ratio. So you can see in that graphic on the 2017 year, we're positive. That's because funds were coming in and we weren't necessarily geared up to deploy those funds. In the 18 and 19 years, we're now spending that initial grant funding money that came through. Own source operating revenue is tracking towards 60%, but like a lot of regional rural councils, that's a pretty hard target to get to in the absence of parking meters and some of the other things that some of the more metro councils have. Unrestricted current ratio, this is the one flagging your cash levels earlier on. So what it's essentially saying is that council holds $3.27 of current assets for every $1 of liabilities. If you thought about that, the benchmark is dollar for dollar. Safe margin is $1.50 of assets for every dollar of liability. The council's carrying $3.27 of asset for every dollar of liabilities. So from our perspective, and being able to say, is council a going concern, we feel very comfortable in terms of your solvency levels. With such a low level of debt, there's not a lot to say in the debt service cover ratio. Your rates and annual charges outstanding percentage, this is quite encouraging for you guys. The outstanding percentage is 6.5%. The benchmark is set at 10, and this would indicate two things. Both the ratepayers are comfortable to pay, and the recovery efforts of the debtor function inside council's finance team is clearly operating effectively. So that ratio gave an encouraging outcome. And the last comments around infrastructure, property, plant and renewal, and what we're saying there is we've got $4.5 million in roads and about another $4.5 million in capital works in progress. So quite significant activity as council continues to deploy its function as an asset manager. There was some new accounting standards applicable for the year. The main one was AASB 9. Because council holds security over the underlying land on the rates, it's a less of an issue. And we didn't observe any instances of legislative non-compliance. So towards the end of February, Min Lee, who's a director for the New South Wales Audit Office, signed out both your audit report and your conduct report and shared that around Phil and then your Audit and Risk Improvement Committee and shot a version off to the Department of Planning, Industry and Environment as well. But for our first time through, there was a number of project management issues, especially applying revaluation of asset activity and making sure that we're up to speed with the two amalgamated trial balances. But ultimately, council achieved a clean audit opinion. So that was our goal at the outset. So our recognition to Tim and his team and the resources deployed to get that done. Happy to take questions on the conduct report or anything pertaining to the audit, but in a remote setting sense such as this, that's the conduct report which really bookends that 2019 audit process.
Is there any questions there from councillors or staff?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question to Brad, if that's okay.
Sure.
Gil Keller here, Brad. In your opinion, would you deem our council to be fit for the future in its current fiscal position? Because pretty much what you've said is a 180-degree difference on what Dr. Joseph Drew said in his current reports.
Yeah, there's a couple of different things there that are probably being assessed. My lens is one of the horizon of 12 months from signing date. So in a going concern setting, so can you pay your debts as and when they fall due? Fit for the future is a longer, on my hands don't really fit in the screen, a longer time horizon. And I think Cootamundra-Gundagai, along with a lot of other regional rural councils, if you've got a large road network to maintain, which you do, the current design of the funding models makes it very challenging for you to be able to satisfactorily do that into the out years of the future. So you, along with a lot of other rural councils, have got a real challenge on your hands because you're not getting funded and you don't have the level of ratepayer activity in order to maintain the asset load that you've got. So that's probably bridging the gap between that fit for the future solvency thing on a horizon platform versus my lens is saying we've got money in the bank right now, but what this probably doesn't factor in is your asset management plan coming out of your integrated planning and reporting. And if periodically you need to either fund those via debt or a special rate variation, either one is going to cause you challenges into the future. So, but that's the bit that is probably past the remit of what this statutory audit is saying.
No worries, thank you.
Brad, David Graham here. Just with your experience in auditing a lot of local government organisations, you talk about our debt being very low. What do you consider a level of debt that allows you to catch up a little bit with, particularly with your infrastructure, rather than let it get behind? Because eventually, once it gets behind, you never really catch up, I don't think, unless you get a special grant from the government. So just interested to know your views on that.
Yep, thank you. I suppose it depends on where you are with major significant infrastructure items. So again, the comment, just an observation of the numbers, for only 2.6 million of debt at 30 June 19, considering the overall size of council, that's fairly negligible. Interest rates are quite low at the moment. So it's an opportune time to revisit your asset management plan and take advantage of borrowing rates that let you fund some of those long-lived assets, because this is the whole challenge in local government. Do today's residents fundamentally pay for something that future residents are going to enjoy, or how do you do that? But I'd suggest you could carry comfortably a level of debt higher than where you currently are. Exactly what that right number is, I would have to, there'd be some mechanics behind that, but moving it up towards approaching 10 would be safe inside what your peer group have got. And then it's about projects that are making the assets longer lived and bringing them to the satisfactory standard, or deploying new initiatives that are for community benefit. But you certainly have the mechanism of access to debt, and you would have funders who would be prepared to fund you based on the revenue security that's there. I am aware from conversations with Tim that assessing the asset management plan, the T Corp would have provided a couple of flags and said, gee, you should go back and revisit that. but I think they were in the out years of the calculations. There's no doubt you could carry more debt. The question is how much more.
Thank you. Because one of the fit for the future criteria was that they looked at as a positive was that councils carried debt rather than just have all cash. If memory serves me right, back in the days of 2016.
Yes, yeah, you're right. Yep.
Any other questions, councillors?
Yeah.
I think we're pretty right from this end.
Dennis, you got one?
No, I was just saying, I think from this room, I think there's no further questions.
Yeah, just one other one, Brad. In relation to provisions, particularly, that's our biggest liability. What are you seeing around the traps where we can go about possibly potentially reducing that liability, particularly the annual leave side of it?
Yeah, sure. It's something that needs to be managed, and you're right. Your employee leave entitlements are the two bigger ones, both long service leave and annual leave. The problem is the challenge of excessive annual leave balances takes a number of years to build up, and so it also takes a number of years of active management to bring back down. It's kind of hard to fix it all in one go because council would have some employees who are a bit mission critical, and if you park them out on long-term leave, it's counterproductive to what you're trying to achieve. But ongoing progressive efforts to try and bring down your annual leave balance would be a step in the right direction from our side. A separate question is how much you would restrict of that in terms of your internal restrictions back against that balance, but there'd certainly be scope to pull down your annual leave owing as council further beds down the amalgamated setting and can get the various departments and teams into an operating rhythm where people are taking their entitlement or any excess balances on an annual basis in order to get that level. At 30 June 19, annual leave for the council owing was 1.3 million. That's a sizable number, and there's opportunities for that to be taken back down a couple of notches. But to be fair to the management team, that should be the dial set to achieve that should be over a 2 or 3 year period, because the problem just didn't occur in the last 12 months. It built up over a period of time.
Thank you. One other final question, and that is, with the drop in the share market, and I remember back when we had the old Gundagai Council into the global financial crisis 2008, we had X number of employees in those defined superannuation funds. What type of revision should we be looking at in our planning going forward for this current year, given what has happened in the last 6-7 weeks with our share market, because we still have people on defined benefit super funds?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and that's the $64,000 question, which probably doesn't sound that much these days. That's the great unknown. There's no doubt that the benefit compared to last time is we've got less employees that are involved in those defined benefit schemes, but they're still there, they still exist, and largely they're funded, as you pointed out, by equity markets. If that value goes down, the fund reaches out to participants in order to fund that shortfall. I think in simple terms, what we're saying is a couple of years ago where we got a contribution holiday, that's certainly not going to happen this year. And if anything, your contribution of last year, we'd expect that to increase. Exactly what it's going to increase by, there'll be an actuary involved, but I don't have a great lens at the moment on what it is, other than saying it's encouraging that you're aware that you're running that exposure, because there's no doubt that there'll be a call on the defined benefit this year, because it just didn't have enough excess in it to be able to absorb the gap without making an additional call. So I think as those communications come through, it's probably the more appropriate request would be of Tim, as they hear from the defined benefit plan and the actuary, that those are called out. So I think for this year, 19, our anticipated contribution was for 1920 148 grand. You could expect the number to go up from there, but how much up? That's a bit hard to pick at the moment. But as correspondence is received, we'd really be wise for Tim to share that with council because it's not going to be a small number.
Thank you.
Brad, if I could, just one quick last question, if I could. The operating performance of council, you've made a comment here that this indicates council cannot contain its operating expenditure within the operating revenues. Given the current climate, can you see us getting control of that, or we're going to continually be in the negative?
No, I don't think you'll continually be in the negative. A little bit that result is a tad distorted because of the grant funding that you'd received initially upon amalgamation and then the 12 months after that. And so we'd booked it as revenue. Then as we spend it, you need to book it as expenses as we then spend it. And so the problem is it's the black art of accounting where, in simple terms, the revenue should be matched, which means that just when they tip it into your bank account, if you haven't spent it yet, normal people would think you would defer that to the balance sheet as a liability and then only bring it back when you're actually spending it. The problem is that matching concept is not what plays in at the moment. So it's kind of like in the 17 year, the 16 year when we first merged, we got this upside of grant revenue coming in. We didn't have the people or the projects to be able to spend it. As we're then spending it, we sort of haven't got our new normal. Our new normal is probably going to be, as much as anything, this 2020 year as some of those grant funds are flushing out. But still, even in 19, we've got another bump of stronger communities funding money of, $3.5 million, and we hadn't spent much of that. So the expense is going to chase through in 2020. We're still chasing that flat year, which then gives us the ability to compare apples with apples. But at face value, I wouldn't say council has a problem with that. You're really just trying to move your way out of that, what do you call it? Late childhood, early adolescent merged entity to the more young adult where things are planing on a level plane year on year.
Thank you.
Right, Brad. Well, thanks very much. I don't think there's any more questions from anyone. We thank you and your firm of Crow Auditing for doing the auditing for us, and no doubt we'll be in touch in the future.
Yeah, good on you. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your evening.
Thanks, Brad.
Thanks, Brad.
Righto, we'll go back to...
I'll move that way, Mr Mayor.
Moved Councillor Nicholson, seconded Councillor Bowden. All in favour of that report? Yeah. I saw you put your hand up there, Lee. We're going back to page 34.
I'll move to go back to 5.2.
The Councillor Graham, seconded Councillor Palmer. All in favour? Carried.
Yeah, item 5.2 are the minutes of the Internal Audit Committee. Meeting was held the 12th of March. They're there to be received and noted. And the second recommendation is there that the external audit report on the operation of 355 committees attached under separate cover and foreshadowed administrative actions also be noted.
I'll move the resolution.
Councillor Phillips.
What was that? Someone saying it. Did someone say anything there in Cooter?
Doug moved it.
Oh, moved Councillor Phillips, seconded Councillor Graham. All in favour? Page 35.
That's Merrill minutes, Mr Mayor, to be received and noted.
Is there any changes there?
Yeah,
Yes.
just sorry, Councillor Bowden. On the 21st, 22nd of February, I did not attend the Local Government Women's Association Forum.
And just with that, it wasn't actually a local government women's forum. It was the local government women's executive committee meeting in Griffith.
Mr. Mayor, just a couple of alterations for myself. The 5th of March, I attended the Cootamundra Tag AGM, and the 12th of March, I also attended the Jubilee Park opening. Thank you.
No, not Jubilee Park.
Moved.
Move Councillor Palmer, second Councillor Stewart, all in favour? Carried.
We turn to page 39, is the information bulletin. The information bulletin's got a range of correspondence in it under separate cover to be received and noted, and it's there for Council to consider the correspondence and recommend any action if necessary.
I'll move that be noted.
Seconded.
Move Councillor Kelly, second Councillor Palmer, all in favour? Carried. Now you go to 44, mate, don't you? 44. Action report. Page 44, the action report, if I'm right.
So item 8.1.2 is the action report, updating council actions to be received and noted.
Any questions there? No questions? Someone like to move that report?
I'll move it.
Seconded.
Moved Councillor Bowden,
Bowden.
seconded. Who was the seconder? Councillor
Stewart.
All in favour? Carried.
Item 8.1.3 are the minutes of the Cootamundra Heritage Committee meetings held the 3rd of February 2020 and the 2nd of March 2020. And they're provided under separate cover to be received and noted.
I think there might be some recommendations there. Which one are we up to? Showground Users Group? Oh, Heritage. No, the Heritage, right. Move Councillor Graham, second Councillor Phillips, all in favour? Carried.
Item 8.1.4 is the Cootamundra Showground Users Group 355 Committee minutes of the 18th of March 2020 to be received and noted, and further that the proposed recommendations contained in the minute be considered.
First recommendation is to reimburse fees or waive next year's fees of the S355 Showground Committee for riding for the disabled due to effects of drought and extra expenses.
Mr. Mayor, could I?
Yep.
Could I suggest that we reimburse those fees for this year and then encourage that the riding for the disabled to approach the community donations fund as we discussed at the last workshop. They have been told several times that they need to write each year to the council asking for a donation of those fees. So
There
they
is no
haven't done
fees
it.
to reimburse from this year,
Pardon?
my understanding. I don't think there is any fees to be reimbursed from this year. It's for next year only.
It says recommendation reimburse fees or waive next year's fees of the 355. There, you're not saying actually reimburse. Well, I suppose if they reimburse it.
Yeah, there's none from this year to be reimbursed. Andrew might want to comment further.
Right.
Through the chair, the actual group has paid their fees for this year, and so as a result they were asking for reimbursements, or we consider them not paying next year's fees.
I'd be probably, if it was me, I'd prefer to go with not paying next year's fees, because we start to reimburse one person for because of the drought, and that we're going to be reimbursed, have everyone asking for reimbursements in this type of situation. As it is, we can't waive fees. It's got to be make it a donation at the time. when they come
I'm
to you.
happy, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to move that recommendation as written.
Could I just ask Andrew or Gil, what is the dollar value here?
$1,000, I believe that's the case. All the user groups contribute $1,000 each. And given the work of Writing for Disabled with the disabled number of privileged children in Cootamundra, I don't think they've actually, this might be the first year they've actually had to make a payment. And you might like to confirm that or not.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. That is correct. It is $1,000 a year that each user group pays. And the Writing for Disabled obviously don't pay any additional fees for use of the grounds or anything else during the year.
I'll second the motion.
So let's get it straight. Gil, you said there's nothing to be reimbursed. Well, this motion is saying recommendation to reimburse fees or waive next year's fees. So there are some other two. They mean reimburse last year's fees?
No, the motion is to waive next year's, not this year's. Waive next year's fee.
Councillor Bowden just touched on the fact that councils are looking to open an opportunity for once a year before setting budgets each year for community groups to make application for available council funds for community purpose. Perhaps we should defer this matter for consideration of for that particular meeting.
What I'd do, and as probably Councillor Bowden said on, make sure the Writing for the Disabled, when we put it out there to put in for donations, if they put in for a donation which is equivalent to what the rate will be, because we can't waive the fees, we have to make it as a donation.
I'd agree. I'd move that motion that Phil just put forward, that we hold it over. Councillor Phillips.
You want to withdraw yours, Gil?
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, we've got Councillor Phillips. We'll hold it over till we go through the donations. Second at Councillor Graham. All in favour?
Aye.
Dangerous tree at the showground. That is on. It's on page 131, Phil. Oh, sorry, no, you're wrong. Yeah, 131. Does anyone, let's say that tree is on the showground, not on the private property.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Andrew, would you consider that assumption of a dangerous tree is correct?
Yes, Councillor Nicholson. It actually has dropped a large limb already, and the remainder of the tree is basically hollowed and has the potential to fall on neighbouring properties.
I move the recommendation that the trees removed before someone gets killed.
I'll second that.
Councillor Graham,
can we use
Councillor Nicholson?
Hey?
Just on that? Can we use staff to do that, not a contractor, or not, to save a few dollars if possible?
I'd say if we've got a staff member that can do it, we certainly should use them, yeah.
That point's noted, councillors, and we'll proceed under that manner.
All right, all in favour? Carried. The other one is, that's it, yeah.
Well, we've just done the recommendations separately, so we'll just item number 2 can be changed to 2 and 3 for those particular items. Item 8.1.5 of minutes of the Stock and Bingle Memorial Hall 355 committee meeting held the 27th of February 2020, and they're there to be received and noted.
I'll move it.
Move Councillor Graham, second Councillor Palmer. Any comments? All in favour? Carried.
Item 8.1.6 of the minutes of the Gundagai Tourism Action 355 committee meeting held the 24th of February 2020. The recommendation is there for the meeting minutes to be received and noted, and that council consider the recommendations contained within the attached minutes.
The recommendations that council adopt the brand concept 3, Gundagai Unleash Your Freedom, and I think we'll have something shortly. I think also from Cootamundra-Gundagai, which they want their concept 3, but it's the concept 3 is definitely by far and away the best for Gundagai for theirs. Move that way, Councillor Nicholson.
Mr Mayor, I will.
Move Councillor Nicholson. Second to Councillor Graham. All in favour? Carried. Yep. The other recommendation, council look at the option for funding a speaker system down the main street that plays the radio station and can be used for events.
I think it's a great idea, but let's get some costings and try and have it ready for when the budget committees meet to work out whether we can fund it or not.
Mr Mayor, the operative word is that that council looks for options for funding. So I know we have a great team, so they will be looking out for funding for that. No purchases will be made until funding is sought.
Let's move Councillor Graham. Any comments from anyone on CUDA? Move Councillor Graham, second to Councillor Bowden. All in favour? Carried.
Mr Mayor, could I just draw the council's attention now to the omission of the Cootamundra Tourism Action Group minutes. It was a mission. The minutes were sent to council on the 12th of March, and the committee was keen that their recommendations were also acknowledged. I don't know if you want to include it when we're doing 355 committees or wait till another time.
So, councillors, that's tabled for you today. It is we're still waiting on some signatures from those people that have been nominated to be part of that committee. So the report wasn't finalised, but it was considered appropriate to put it in front of you today. You'd need a resolution to accept it as a late report and consider the matters as appropriate.
I move Councillor Graham, second to Councillor Stewart, to take it as a late report. Now we'll consider it. Do you want to comment on it or anything, Councillor Bowden?
Just that the recommendations, a couple of the recommendations can be carried over, but just to note that the recommendation that council note that the Cootamundra Tourism Action Group's preference for brand concept 3. However, if this concept is also adopted by council, that further tweaks to the logo design and a different byline be implemented to better reflect the key offerings and community pride in Cootamundra that CTAG believe have been missed from the current draft strategy document. So I'd like to move that as a recommendation.
Just hang on. This is on page
2.
2.
Of the minutes, not the AGM.
Yeah, there's other. Where's the recommendation on this one?
1.5 discussion, page 2 of the minutes.
Yeah, well, so we're doing the council. No, which one are you saying? Not the CTAG one. No, well, that's not. What's the recommendation you're moving about using the from that wisdom? You mean the number 3?
Yeah, same. But the committee wanted tweaked because the tagline didn't represent didn't represent Cootamundra like the tagline in Gundagai represented Gundagai. So they just want option 3, but more tweaking, please, to go back to wisdom.
Oh yeah, right. I got it here now. Yep, brand 3. So you want to move that way?
Yes, thank you.
Second? Do you want a second over there or here? Or? seconded Councillor Sheen. All in favour?
Yep.
Carried. So we're going to deal with this other recommendation while we're here. We may as well, wouldn't we?
No, that can be resubmitted at another time.
Oh, right. No worries.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Mayor, we'll bring these minutes, and particularly the AGM and the adoption of nominated people, back through the April council meeting, if that's okay, and formalise that appropriately then. So we move to item 8.1.7 on page 49. Minutes of the meeting of the Arts Centre Cootamundra 355 committee meeting held the 19th of March 2020. There's a recommendation there that it be received and noted, and council consider any recommendations contained in the attached minutes.
The first recommendation, I presume, is that works. This is the testing and tagging theatre lighting. Am I correct? That these works are undertaken by John Silvestro Griffith. It delivers follow-on support. Follow on, I suppose. Delivers on support. TACC will cover costs over and above that quoted by Soundfits. Can I just ask why you aren't using Soundfits if they're cheaper? Because they're cooler, aren't they?
Mr. Mayor, may I speak to that, please? That recommendation actually isn't legal, because only the council's procurement officers can make that kind of decision.
Right.
But the recommendation could read that the committee recommends that the procurement officer consider John Silvestro to undertake the testing and tagging work. And the reason for that is, and Greg Briscoe-Huff talks about in his governance with 355 committees, that often members of the committees have the expertise to actually do the job up to the standard that a theatre testing and tagging would require. So they're asking Andrew to please consider this fellow from Griffith over and above the group from Wagga because of his experience. So that's what that's about, but it is Andrew's decision.
Right, so it's not a recommendation. Well, we can put that aside. Do you want to go to the next one?
Andrew, would you like to comment at that?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Both companies have put forward a very valid quote. The Griffith company has done more of a day rate and have suggested the works will take, up to 5 days. But both companies are allowing for looking at all the existing equipment, tagging out anything that is no longer safe or usable, putting together a recommendation in an asset register of items that could be sold, and then looking at the actual lighting bar setup that will have the best multi-use for that space. And they're also looking at doing upgrades to the lighting board and the sound boards. So both companies have a lot of experience, and I am working with Isabel on which way we do move forward.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, you're exactly right, but Councillor Bowden, we need to do an assessment of the two proposals in front of us and award it based on merit.
Yeah, the recommendation 2, that's a recommendation, is it all? Is that one?
Mr. Mayor, the other recommendations are on page 49 of the business paper, and that's to do with the grant funding, construction around egress compliance issues for safe access to and from the centre. The footpath in front of TAC is upgraded for safety of patrons and associated levels to the entry of the building, so wheelchairs. So that's actually been put at the bottom of 8.1.7.
Yeah. Well, what on just I'm a bit confused here. On that page 142, there's other recommendations there. So we'll just forget them because they're about the tagging system, and that's got to come from council, I presume.
Can,
And then
can,
there's
can I,
also
can I
on the
suggest that
recommend-
our council officers will take on board the recommendations and make the appropriate decisions in the management of that facility?
Just quickly with that, you're talking about out the front. If you read further, I read there somewhere about there's a $60,000 loan. The way I read it, they can't do something with it, and they want to change it to be doing some of that's out the front and some to the garage, work to the garage. I'm just trying to have a look at I've got it here. Anyway, I think best if the council officers speak with themselves.
Yeah, I know council had some, it was highlighted to councillors before that the building requires some essential fire safety type upgrades prior to being able to undertake some of the work, and I believe that these recommendations are trying to get in and do some of that work now before that essential fire rules. So if you don't mind, I think we can refer it back to our planning team and our facilities manager to sort through the details and communicate back with the committee on what the appropriate way forward is.
Right, in the recommendations on the meeting itself, we got the minutes of the Arts Centre be received and noted, and then we've got an option to council to consider the recommendation. We might just put the council officers to speak to the Arts Centre. Or TAC.
I'll move that.
Move Councillor Bowden, second to Councillor Graham, all in favour? Carried.
Okay, item 8.1.8 of the minutes of the Arts Centre Cootamundra 355 committee held 20th of February 2020 to be received and noted.
Moved as such.
Move Councillor Phillips, second to Councillor Stewart, all in favour? Carried.
Item 8.1.9 is a report to Council from Cootamundra Creative Arts Incorporated, March 2020, and there's a recommendation there that the report be received and noted.
Move that way.
Move Councillor Phillips, was it? Second Councillor Bowden, all in favour? Carried.
Item 8.1.10 is a further review of the 355 committee operations. There's a recommendation there that Council hold a workshop to consider its approach to ongoing community participation and administrative burdens on the operational independence of community groups, and 2, that Council assess the effectiveness of the 355 committee structure in best achieving the required balance between governance, administrative requirements and expectations of the community in respect of the desired delivery and service outcomes. It's quite an informative report that Greg's placed in front of you, and highlights a number of challenges and difficulties and suggestions for improvements on the structure, but I do feel that a workshop setting might be best to consider it.
I feel the same way. Someone want to comment on it, or do someone want to
I'll
move the
I'll
recommendations?
recommendations as printed.
Councillor Sheen, move the recommendations. Seconded Councillor Stewart, all in favour? Carried. Page 59.
Item 8.1.11, Councillor Workshop Report. Councillor held a significant workshop on the 24th of March with presentation of a range of workings that Dr. Joseph Drew has given us in regard to fee harmonisation and financial sustainability in relation to the financial future of our council. And following that workshop and presentation of all that material, there's a range of recommendations there. One that the report on the council's workshop be received. 2, that council endorse the amended material recycling facility to go to tender as tabled at the meeting, tabled at this meeting. Council endorsed the proposed changes to on-site sewer charge. Council approved the allocation of $10,000 for work to be commenced to implement the commercial trade waste charges in Cootamundra. 5, that Council endorsed the proposed changes to the Council community donation policy, and number 6, Council endorsed the financial sustainability review video of Dr. Drew to be shared with staff and the community. Maybe a range of measures to be talked about separately, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, they probably are. I think another one there, we've got sewerage, we probably need to, and these are only resolutions, remember the fees, we've got to adopt the fees and charges, as we said earlier at our April meeting. We probably need one there regarding the water, looking at a resolution to basically look at our fees and charges, including water and sewerage. And these fees, I think we need resolutions to, we haven't done yet, submit an SRV. Do we need a resolution for that, Phil? We have to work that percentage. You've got.
I'd be hesitant to resolve to submit an SRV without any complex details analysis in front of you.
I mean to look at it. To look at submitting, not saying submit.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So the work that Dr. Drew's been doing on behalf of council, looking at our financial sustainability, there's good information for the community on our website in regard to some of the outcomes of that analysis, and we're certainly making some of those things public as we go. The outcome of the workshop is really endorsing actions to move forward with. A lot of the outcomes that are being facilitated at the moment through his reports is in regard to adoption of new fees and charges structures across all our business units, such as waste and water, sewer, etc. All those fees and charges need to be consolidated into a report that comes to the April council meeting, and we would ask that council would resolve to put those on public exhibition for 28 days. That's the process that we need to follow with that. But the intention of heading down the path of the recommendations that Dr. Drew has discussed with you is certainly the intent of where we're heading to with it.
Any other comments there?
Through the chair, if I could, in regards to the last as the financial sustainability, there is plenty of opportunity after it goes on display to have a lot more input and comment in regard to that document. What I'd like to touch on now, if I could, through the General Manager, excuse me, is item number 2. Can the General Manager tell me that the amended material recycling document, can you tell me what the amended document says about the weighbridge staffing? I'm a wee bit confused. We discussed this at the workshop, but then I read here careful consideration has been given by the management of the weighbridge. So can the General Manager just clarify what the amended contract states in regards to the management of the weighbridge at our waste facility?
Can I just ask, is Wayne Bennett there to address that question?
Yeah, the document referring back to the MRF operation excludes the operation of the weighbridge. Recommendations as put forward recommend that council take control and management of the weighbridge, and the new tender document as presented excludes the current contractor from that mode of operation.
Okay, if I could make further comment in regards to item 2. I'm totally against employing any more council staff to run the weighbridge. It's been identified. It has if there is an identified problem with the current operation, can't we write that into the new tender document so that there is no problem? Point number one, I'd like to make that the council's long-term financial position is not good. And one of the major implications is the employee costs. Quotes from the independent review, council should be well advised to look at ways of reducing employee costs. Point two, the wage structure of government employees is much greater and the regulatory and social burdens are also greater. We have approved the employment of a deputy GM, which I totally agree is necessary, but I do not agree with employing new staff members to manage the weighbridge. Point number three, we're a bit disappointed with the council staff being unaware that as of 2006, Cootamundra residents paid a $20 a tonne premium for scrap metal that was deposited at their local facility. This $20 a tonne premium was placed on our local residents to cover the cost of council managing that pile of waste metal while re-rock formed a suitable tonnage for a sale of the tender of the scrap metal. I am just concerned that some of the local knowledge has been lost with the amalgamation. Comment has been made and commented that the waste metal constitutes a cost to this council. The cost of pushing up the waste metal is covered by a $20 a tonne levy, which was placed way back in 2006. It's still in force, I believe. But I would like to move an amendment that council not take over the management of the weighbridge. They write it into the new current tender, into a draft tender. And I'm strongly against increasing our staff numbers, especially in the light of if this de-amalgamation takes place. We do not want to be overburdened with staff. I don't know if anybody wants to support that amendment, but if I could, I'd ask somebody to second it.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Can we check if that $20 is still being charged to residents on their rates, I presume, is it?
I believe that when a resident takes, I believe when a resident takes scrap metal to our facility, they are charged $20 a tonne. I think that's still in force. If somebody could correct me, I'd stand corrected. I do believe it's still in force.
With Wayne, there with the costing of 70,000 employee, 140. Is that taken into working weekends and penalty rates and on costs and
annual leave?
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this was the process as presented by the independent review. The issue was discussed with me. I put my case in regards to the situation. The independent review was undertaken in accordance with my comments, plus what his undertakings and his views were as part of the process. And for us to manage waste effectively and efficiently and to be able to comply with EPA regulations, this is the recommendation that was put forward. And all costs associated with the cost of those employees has been incorporated as part of the fees and charge structure.
Just through the chair, if I could, Mr. Mayor, I move the amendment. It was seconded. Once that happens, any discussion on the motion should cease, and there should only be a discussion on the amendment until it is moved or lost. So I moved it. I have a seconder. I'd like you to put it to a vote or further discussion on the amendment, please.
On the amendment, right? Was there no more discussion on the amendment?
I'd like to speak to it, Mr. Mayor, if I can, just briefly.
Yeah.
The weighbridge staff from Allura have been doing their job for a number of years. They get great satisfaction in speaking to the residents who bring out their rubbish to the tip, and as much as the residents enjoy speaking to the guys from Allura as well. I think they perform a great job. Okay, there might be a few issues currently with EPA and stuff, but that comes back to us to impart the regulations or whatever in the contract. We've got now's the opportunity to write the contract. It's a blank piece of paper. Why can't we write all this stuff into the contract to make sure all rules and processes are followed and leave the disadvantaged in our community employees?
Yeah, I've got no problem with that. So you're saying there are some issues with the Raybridge people, but where they...
Well, I believe that's why this whole thing has come about, isn't it? Because some regulations with the EPA and that aren't currently being followed.
It's more of a case of council being in control of a section of our waste management that allows us to collect appropriate charges, have control over what comes in, comes out, and potentially increase our revenue streams in terms of making sure that things that come in are all appropriately charged.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to speak against the amendment.
Yep, we can have it against. We haven't had anything against.
If the recommendation to have council staff manage the weighbridge was worked out in consultation with Dr. Drew, who mentioned in his report about cutting the outdoor staff, then I think it's worth going with Dr. Drew and the manager of waste's recommendation. Therefore, I don't support the amendment.
Oh, you support the amendment? You just said you want to speak against the amendment.
Therefore, I don't support the amendment. I do not support it. That is, I'm against it.
Just a point of clarification. When contaminated soil comes in, is it weighed across this weighbridge, and who is managing that avenue of it?
Wayne, are you able to answer that question, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, everything that goes over the weighbridge is run and controlled by the current contractor.
Mr. Mayor, if there's no further comment in regards to the amendment, do you think we could put that amendment?
Yep, the amendment is that we take it out of the tender document. Is that...
Sorry, to say again?
You repeat your amendment so Marianne can write it down.
Repeat the amendment to leave it in the hands of Laura to
the amendment
ongoing
is
employment.
Council redraft the draft tender document to include the management and staffing of the weighbridge, whoever the successful tender may be.
Yep. No. So, right, there's a bit of confusion in the room here, just about. So this is. Anyway, I'll put the motion. There's a bit of confusion what we're talking about. The amendment that was seconded by Gil.
That's correct.
I'll put the amendment. All in favour?
Aye.
You'll have to tell us who's got hands up on your side, Mr. Mayor. We can't see your screen.
There's myself. You got 2 there. You got 4. So it's defeated.
Can we have the numbers, please, Mr. Mayor? Who was
5, 4.
in favour?
4. So there's 4 here. Myself, Dennis, Stewie, and yourself. And then 2 here against Penny and David, and Charlie and Doug, and all against. Now you got them. 3 there, David and Penny.
Okay. Amendment's
So
defeated.
it's 9. Just hang on. Who put their hands up there against? Right. Charlie, there's 2, 5. Yep, there's 5 against the amendment, 4 for it, so it's defeated.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Phillips, can I move the recommendation as stands then?
I second that.
Is now a time to move a motion that we utilise? Is now a time to move an amendment that we utilise current employed staff in their positions, not hire new staff?
I think the general manager will make the best choice there.
We can take on board that comment, Councillor Kelly, and see whether we can utilise existing resources within those roles. Yes.
So we doing the whole 6 together. Right, Councillor Phillips, you want to move the whole 6 recommendations?
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor.
And I'll second that.
Yeah, I've got Councillor Nicholson here. Sorry, Councillor Shane. Move Councillor Phillips, second to Councillor Nicholson. All in favour? Hands up, please. 1, 2. You up or down, Stu? You're up. All right. So you got 8. Wait, all 4 except Councillor Palmer against. That was for the whole 6 recommendations.
So we move on to page 61, 8.1.12, final report for Boundaries Commission. There's a recommendation there that Council receive the final report for Boundaries Commission, Dr. Drew's cover over letter for the Boundaries Commission report, and the Local Government Boundaries Commission notice of submission attached under separate cover. 2, that the Mayor and General Manager be authorised to distribute Dr. Drew's cover letter for the Boundaries Commission report and the final report for the Boundaries Commission attached with Council's submission to the Boundaries Commission to the Minister for Local Government, Premier, Deputy Premier and Member for Cootamundra. 3, that the final report to the Boundaries Commission report be displayed on Council's website and a copy be made available at the customer service centres. And 4, a copy be made available to any interested parties.
I'll move that, Mr. Mayor.
Move Councillor Nicholson, second to Councillor Graham. All in favour? Carried.
Item 8.1.13 is Riverina Joint Organisation Board meeting report. There's a recommendation there that the report on the Riverina Joint Organisation Board meeting held the 27th of February 2020 be received and noted. It was a meeting where we had the opportunity to attend New South Wales Parliament House and have a number of existing standing members present and share their views on a range of elements. If anyone's got any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Any questions?
Yeah, could I ask?
Yeah.
The Minister for Planning spoke about solar farms and agricultural land. What's the take there?
I think it's a little bit up in the air, but
Yeah, the big issue that's impacting on everyone at the moment is there's lots of these schemes in our region under consideration at the moment, and at the moment councils are unable through the current processes to obtain Section 712 contributions. So any development, as you're aware, attracts developer contribution funds and allows council to distribute money across its resources as required in accordance with those plans. Because they're state significant developments, there's clauses there that allow them to get off scot-free. So if you happen to have a $30 million development, our usual developer contribution charges are in the order of 1%. So councils are missing out on significant amount of money. So that issue was addressed by the Minister, and they're looking at a solution on a sliding scale that requires all those developers to make a contribution which would benefit the LGAs that are impacted. In terms of the ability to compromise with land use farming to solar development, a lot of debate has occurred, and I think they haven't really reached a position on it. But if it's allowable development in an allowable zone in an LEP, then they're the issues that you need to weigh up for and against. I don't think they've got a definitive answer on it, and they certainly don't have mapping or zoning which protects areas from multiple use.
One of the other big issue that worries councillors, and I know through REROC, is the waste side of it. And there's a talk of, there could be 2.2+% of panels that are faulty. Okay, so if you've got $1 million panel farm, you're going to have 20,000 panels every so often to put in your tips or put somewhere there. There's a fair few issues, I think.
Another question is, our dear friend, the Minister for Regional Roads, and talking about transferring regional roads, if you look at the Go Cup Road and the fact that a lot of that work was going to be done by, when the funding was originally announced by the old Tumut Shire and the Gundagai Shire, but it was all done by contractors, and all of a sudden they ran 4 kilometres short of where they were meant to finish. What did Mr. Toole have to say in relation to protecting our staff? Because I'm firmly of the belief that a lot of the council work can be done at a lot cheaper rate than what the contractors charge, and that money does not come into local communities. It goes out into the bigger areas, and the money's not spent in the local communities.
Firstly, with that the Tumut Road, it was 80 million, and they didn't get the Cootamundra-Gundagai part in the 4Ks there, which was probably would have been one of the most expensive, about 18 million, I think, Phil, wasn't it? Or 15 to 18 million. So they've come in pretty short there. And as you said, it was meant to be, a lot of the work was meant to be done by our councils and Snowy Valleys, but it didn't eventuate. Mr. Toole, on that issue, I think he's was pretty forthright in saying that what he wants to do, he wants to do. Whether we get the work or not, but it was certainly, he was certainly told by that councils want to do it and want to have the first shot of it. And because if the money's there, why don't you give it to the councils now? Councils, our workforces, what they can do, K's the road, and they do a fantastic job, and we don't put anything on top. So that was put to him and told to him. If the money's there for them to take it over and do it, why don't you just give it to the councils now and let them do it as it is? That's where I'm coming from. But he was, I suppose, fairly adamant that's probably the way they'll go. Phil, did you have anything on that?
No, it wasn't there's certainly no guarantees, and he doesn't, put a value on establishing and maintaining existing workforce numbers. If they make a change and scale it back, it's tough luck.
Through the Mayor, if I may.
Yeah.
Through the Mayor, if I may, 2 quick points. The Minister for Agriculture, Adam Marshall, makes a comment there supporting, or your note is supporting a new generation of farmers. How can we initiate activities that will keep young people in farming? That sort of lends a bit to the proposal with our minimum lot size for our future LEP planning. So did any discussion around that come up? And then with the Minister for Housing, Property and Water, Melinda Pavey, housing availability in regional and rural areas and housing for seasonal workers, like with Cootamundra in the future with the possible reopening of the abattoirs and also the construction of the inland rail, that would be pertinent issues there too around housing to accommodate that workforce.
Just in terms of the Minister for Agriculture, very switched on, progressive minister, really interesting dynamics of where he's going to. Councillor Sheen, he really just gave a speech on what initiatives he's been involved with at the moment, and there wasn't the opportunity to ask a specific question about our opportunities through our LEP that you just raised. So that wasn't part of the discussion, so I can't give you any feedback on that one. Minister for Water, Melinda Pavey, is certainly open to innovation in terms of if we've got an opportunity where we think we can come up with a scheme that creates housing availability, she wants to hear from it. So I guess she was open to any suggestions that that local government has in terms of partnering and coming up with innovative schemes that might get the benefit that we desire in our town. So, but no specifics given about ways to do it, but she's all ears.
One comment I'd like to pass is where Adam Marshall passed a comment about initiate activities to keep young people on farming. There is a push I know from, within the profession that I'm in that to get the federal government to make some taxation amendments in relation to capital gains tax amendments, because it currently works on a $2 million turnover, and given what has happened and the way the prices have gone up and this and that, there's an increasingly less number of people that can access that. So there has been a number of submissions made to the Deputy Prime Minister and other people in government for the feds to consider that, because that is for people that are getting a bit of age about them and have acquired or built up land assets they want to pass on to their next generation or keep the next generation going. There's some significant issues appearing there, so that's one area where if they stepped up there, it could make a big difference to passing on to the next generation.
Certainly, Charlie, on that, there was no talk of size blocks, such as what we're talking with our LEP, but it was probably one of those discussions that sort of wasn't relevant in the discussion. We only did have half an hour of each one, and they did tell you what their thoughts, which are noted sort of there, and where they're up to, but there was definitely no discussion on lot sizes.
Just one quick comment, if I could. The Minister for Health, Brad Hazzard, was actually made aware of and acknowledged the fact that Cootamundra-Gundagai Regional Council, through its TAFE facility, has one of the better nurses training facilities in the Riverina, and there was no need for it to be moved to a larger provincial centre, and that was acknowledged during that meeting with Mr Hazzard. I just thought it was a good positive outcome for Cootamundra-Gundagai Regional Council to have the facility recognised at a state level.
That's right, and that was, Dennis, I don't know if you were at the meeting or not, Mayor Conkey of Wagga was at a meeting where he brought up about promoting the Cootamundra TAFE for nursing.
Yeah, that was correct. He said there was absolutely no need for the facility to be removed from Cootamundra to Wagga. He said the facility here is first grade and the results have been top quality and recognised statewide. Yeah,
and same as you said, I think he was more promoting it for people, from their areas to do it through Coota TAFE. Any other questions? Let's move. Councillor Stewart, second to Councillor Sheen. All in favour? Carried.
Item 8.2.1 is the investment report for February 2020, put there to be received and noted.
That move, Councillor Phillips, second to Councillor Graham. All in favour? Carried.
Item 8.2.2 was the presentation of the audited financial statements, which occurred at the start of the meeting. I think you still need a move and a second up for those recommendations.
Move, Councillor Graham, second to Councillor Phillips. All in favour? Carried.
Could I ask that a letter of thanks be sent to the auditor for his very down-to-earth explanation of where we are? Probably the best I've heard since I've been involved in council. Thank you.
We can do that.
Page 68.
Item 8.2.3 is the monthly finance report for February 2020 to be received and noted.
I'll move that way, Mr Mayor.
Just before,
questions?
one question. I draw your attention, and it's one we've been hammering about, is that our planned income isn't tracking how it should be, and it's going to present us with problems at the 30th of June. As you might recall, we had those items of plant we were going to buy on the basis that X amount of income was going to come in, but I think we're going to end up in negative the way it seems to be tracking, unless Tim's got something to add to that.
The plan sits with Ganesh. He's reviewing that at the moment. I'm not sure if he wants to give an update on where that's up to.
Yep. The certain rates of the plan we are charging, I checked with adjoining one of those council information, which I didn't have access to all of them. Probably we need to revise some of them upward. Can you hear me?
Yep, yeah, keep going, yep.
Yeah. So some of the rates need to be revised upward, and I think compared to last year we are tracking very similar, but I don't know whether we get the full income to the year. But at this stage, some of those benchmark hours for the several plans are not all of them. A few of them are pretty low. Like some of them sitting like should be sitting, say, technically like well over 50%, but some of them are sitting below that. So the respective managers should encourage actually to also for the plans. And recently we bulk booked some of those small plans, which made a big difference. So at this stage, the intended purchase is the water truck, which is about 80 grand, which was in the program to purchase, which is in a bad state at Coota, the water sewer boys truck. That's the only major item. And other than that, maybe a couple of lease back vehicles. That's in the plan.
I think the point is being made that the plant income's not tracking the way that it needs to, and we probably need to address those matters with a bit of urgency.
Okay, I think we probably I'll probably sit with each of them, and to some of the plans need to be booked into the hours which are not booked, and then the income will go up. Also, there will be, I think the revenue, the rates, we will probably revise it upwards to some of the plans. Because at the moment we have only 1 year worth of data, like a 2019. We have 3 or 4 years worth of expenses. Then it's easy to wait it out and get a better rate for the plant. The cost of plant what we are charging is justified. So.
Any other questions there?
So,
Ganesh, what are you saying? That the plant, all the plants still being charged out the jobs, is it? Like the usage and that of them? Or you're saying some plants are under 50% when they probably are using, they're probably more than 50%, being used more than 50%?
Certain plants, like a benchmark hours, so some of them are well, others are not. A few plants are not. That's one of the reasons. The plant income is low.
I find that a little bit hard to follow, because in speaking with the outdoor staff, they're absolutely flat strapped, and there's a lot of plant being used. So the usage is there. The charge out rate is per our fees and charges, and we have a planned fund that should be able to produce around about $3.2 to $3.3 million a year on historical usage. So what you're saying doesn't really stack up from my point of view. I'm sorry.
Any other comment?
I haven't got the, because I'm in the other room, I don't have access to the recent report. I think it's over 2.1 million, 2.2 million last, the report, the plant income.
$2.2.
Yeah.
So the guys are, the finance guys are putting out weekly and monthly updates on plant usage and all that at the moment. They've gone through a process of addressing all the staff and making sure that the plant is being booked out appropriately. They're currently looking at all the small plant which wasn't being booked out, and they're doing bulk carryover, which probably isn't in this figure for this month, whereby all that plant is charged to a business area where it's utilised through the year. So they're looking at a range of mechanisms. Perhaps we might ask Ganesh to put a formal report addressing the matter to the next council meeting.
Yeah. That report said if there's no other questions, it was moved Councillor Nicholson, second Councillor Stewart. All in favour? Carried.
Item 8.2.4 is about greater finance. There's a recommendation there that the authority be granted to the General Manager to execute the loan application with the Commonwealth Bank of Australia.
Any comments there?
For you, Mr. Mayor, this is a huge...
Sorry.
I am concerned. Are we in a position where we can handle this at the present market? The current replacement vehicle, is it at the end of its life?
Yeah, that's why we did it, Councillor Palmer. At the moment, we're hiring in a grader because that old grader is not active. Is Mark available in the room to confirm?
Mark there at all or not?
No, he's not here.
Thanks.
It was something that was approved at the September meeting with arrangements to be made for finance. So the councillors might remember that the mechanic from the Cootamundra workshop came and spoke about the matter, and it was resolved then to make the purchase, and this was just the finance element of it.
I agree with what you just said, Tim Swan.
I'll move it.
I'll second it, Councillor Bowden.
Councillor Bowden, second Councillor Nicholson. All in favour, carried.
Item 8.4.1, development applications approved for the month of February for 2020 to be noted.
Information noted.
Seconded.
Item 8.4.2 is a listing under Schedule 8, the Clean Air Regulation Control of Burning. There's a recommendation there that the listing under Schedule 8, Clean Air Regulation Control of Burning report is submitted for the consideration of council. I might ask Sharon to talk it through and address any questions.
Okay, so under the Protection of the Environment Operations Regulation for Clean Air, councils have the ability to select which schedule they wish to be listed under. Previously, prior to merger, Gundagai wasn't listed at all, and Cootamundra was listed as requiring approval to burn anything but vegetation. With the remake of the regs or the regulations, we get an opportunity to have another look at this. Having said that, you need approval to burn everything but vegetation. There's some exemptions, and exemptions are around things like agricultural burning, burning of diseased plants and animals, burning for control of weeds where approved, bushfire, hazard reduction, and bearing in mind that there is the ability for people that don't receive a domestic waste service in a residential area to burn their daily accumulation of rubbish as well. So what we were being asked to consider is what part of the regulation we would like as a merged council to be listed under. There's some benefits and costs to both. Irrespective of whether you are required to have approval or not, you can still not cause a nuisance or not cause air pollution. So there's still the mechanism, even without the need for approval, for council to take regulatory action should burning of any sort cause public or nuisance or air pollution or cause distress to any neighbours. So irrespective of what we're listed under, we still have that mechanism available to us. There's still fines available, still other regulatory action that's available. The question that needs to be asked is, do we want to go down the path of making people put in an application? Do we have the staff to assess those applications? And would we recoup those costs in doing that? Or do we simply not be listed at all, as the former Gundagai Council was, and still have the option open to us to take regulatory action should any nuisance or pollution occur?
Through the Chair, could I just ask Sharon to qualify maybe my misunderstanding of the last sentence in the second last paragraph on page 74? I'll read it out. Furthermore, even where an approval is issued, the burning must be permitted to cause environmental or air pollution. That's what it says.
That's obviously a typo there. There's a not missing. There's a not missing there.
But it does not say that, sir.
Sorry.
Councillor Shan here. I move that we don't go down any of the listing and then just hold nuisance burning as something that can be enforced, because we are a rural community. A lot of people use wood heaters and incinerators as well. And I think if we go down this path, we're just creating a hell of a lot of work for our staff.
Yeah, agreed, Councillor Shane.
You, Mr. Chair, can I just ask a quick question?
Who was that? What was that, mate?
I just want to ask Sharon a quick question. If, for argument's sake, my next door neighbour was burning green wood, giving off a lot of smoke, would that be a pollutant?
Yeah, it is. And there are separate regulations again to cover wood fires, internal wood fires. So there's a whole process that you do need to go through under the Local Government Act to install a wood fire. But in doing that, we also, so that's around the installation of the wood fire, but we also have the ability to control the smoke from a wood fire as well under the same regulations that we're discussing here.
So how would you control that if I was to ring up and complain about my neighbour burning what I believe was green timber?
So what we would investigate is the pollution that's caused. So is it causing smoke? Is it causing nuisance smoke? Bearing in mind that when a wood fire is first started, there is some smoke. So there are regulations or controls around within the regulations that say what is nuisance, and it's if smoke from a wood fire continues after a certain amount of time after it's been lit. So it's not dissimilar to people turning down their fires at night. and creating smoke or burning inappropriate wood or burning inappropriate material, that the regulations or the ability for us to take regulatory action is still there, irrespective of whether we're listed in any of these or not. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, thank you very much.
My question goes further to that. There's a lot of smoke coming over the fence. Obviously, I'm going to ring the fire brigade. Have the fire brigade got permission to tell them to put it out?
Yes, they do. So not dissimilar to ourselves. So the Rural Fire Service during bushfire period, they obviously need a permit to burn. Within the town limits, not only would you need approval from us, you'd also need approval from the New South Wales Fire and Rescue. So you'd need to get 2 approvals within the urban confines. Is that something that we want to take on, or would you prefer to leave it to the New South Wales Fire and Rescue?
I think the best if we move that we not to accept the liability to issue permits.
Yeah,
We don't
Bob,
work.
through the Mayor, if I may, like the motion I put is that we don't adopt any of those schedules.
Yep.
And that we leave the regulatory control to the council. Otherwise, we're creating another tier of bureaucracy for everyone who wants to burn a few sticks or leaves.
Yep.
Have to go to the council
Yep.
and get a permit. Well, if someone burns a tyre, they're going to be called in by the council to and fined possibly, because that's a nuisance fire. So I'm just saying, for the simplicity of not creating this other level of bureaucracy, that we do not adopt any of those schedules.
So do you want to move that way, Councillor Shane?
That's the way I've moved, yeah.
Good. Move Councillor Shane, second Councillor Phillips. All in favour? Carried.
Item 8.6.1 is a report on the Cootamundra Water Mains Replacement Program, to be received and noted.
Make a comment, Mr.
Move
Mayor.
that way.
Just make a quick comment. I know it's cost council a lot of money, but I'll tell you what, how much has Kilos contributed to our economy since they've been here for many, many months?
No, they certainly have maintenance. Certainly helping in their reduction of failure of mains too.
Can
I'll
I just
second
say?
it.
Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Councillor Bowden?
Yeah, I know. I was just going to second the recommendation. Yep.
Phil, were you going to say something?
I was just saying, Council took a very necessary step to try and improve the water mains and the quality of water main breaks that were happening in Cootamundra. Now, before we started, we were getting, on some days, six water main breaks per day. In recent times, in the last few months, we're getting in the order of 1 a fortnight. It's a significant improvement, and there's been a significant reduction in the amount of water complaint about the quality of the water as well. So you've made a significant difference by your investment.
Let's move Councillor Kelly, was it? So put your hand up. Seconded Councillor Bowden. All in favour? Good. Page 79.
Item 8.6.2 is the Stock and Bingle Sewerage Scheme. There's a recommendation there that the report on the Stock and Bingle Sewerage Scheme and the Stock and Bingle Sewerage Scheme Concept Design Report attached under separate cover be received and noted. The Council engaged New South Wales Public Works Authority to prepare a business case for the proposed scheme. And 3, that an application be made under Safe and Secure Water Program for funding towards that detailed design.
I'll move.
Through the chair, if I may,
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, a bit of a contradiction of terms where we say we're going to prepare a business case when it's estimated it's going to cost us about $7.5 million, and there's a tad over 100 connections, which is $75,000 a connection. How are we ever going to get a return on the outlay?
I think, I don't know if you're out of the room, might have been in the Councillor Kelly. I think you brought something of that up in the workshop, did you? Councillor Nicholson, sorry, yeah, Penny. Sorry, Councillor Nicholson. Phil, did you want to comment there?
Councillor Phillips, this is not a way of actually committing council to the cost of building the scheme. That will be a decision of a future council meeting at a point in time where funds may be available. This is really just preparing the scheme to be shovel ready on the shelf to prepare for funding bodies when appropriate. So the idea of the current funding scheme for water and sewer projects in New South Wales is being funded from Safe and Secure. To obtain future funding for Safe and Secure, you need to go through the arrangements of having a feasibility study, a business case, before then you can proceed to applying for matching or 75% construction funding under that particular scheme. The final work of getting the business case done justifies and answers some of those questions that you have in regard to 75 connections, what does it cost per connection and all that sort of thing, which draws out and gives you information to make good decisions on affordability through the next phase. So I think the cost estimate for this was it only 10,000 or something like that? Yeah. To undertake the next phase, but it's going to give you all the information that you need to either justify moving forward or not. But it also presents the final sort of documentation that allows you to do it one day when you want to do it.
Mr Mayor, I think that recommendation was moved by Councillor Palmer. Is that correct? I'd like to second that.
Move, yep. Yeah, move Councillor Palmer, second to Councillor Nicholson. All in favour? Carried.
Item 8.6.3 is a flood management program. There's a recommendation there that Council approve the Cootamundra Flood Risk Management Plan attached under separate cover to be included in an application to be prepared and submitted to the New South Wales Floodplain Management Program. And if the application is successful, Council approve a $20,000 contribution for the project through the Council's Floodplain Management Fund. I don't think we have a Council's Floodplain Management Fund. It would have to be funded under water or sewer funds.
Yeah, water, ours. Any comments there? Someone like to move that way?
Yeah, I'd just like to ask a question. Has the application been prepared? It said in the Floodplain Management Committee that the application would be ready for the March meeting. So is it ready to go? It's due next Wednesday.
Ganesh might back me up here. Yeah. I believe it is ready to go.
Yeah, through the chair. Application has been prepared and is closing on the 5th of April. So we need to go through and lodge it. So it is a 4-to-1 funding. So that means 1/5 or 20% of the fund must come from the council, and the rest is, if the funding is approved, the rest of the money will come from the funding body.
The actual applications were, we've got advised today that due to the current circumstances happening around Australia and the state, that funding window's been extended to allow some of those councils that have been a little bit caught up in the current situation to catch up. So the deadline has changed, but our application is ready, so we'd submit it anyway.
Yeah.
I'd like to move that. Thank you.
Move Councillor Bowden, second Councillor Sheen. All in favour? Carried.
Item 8.7.1 is the Nangus water supply. There's a recommendation here that, one, the report from the Nangus water supply and the Nangus water supply feasibility study attached under separate cover to the report that the report be received and noted. Copies of the Nangus Water Supply Feasibility Study be placed on Council's website and copies be made available to interested community members. 3, that Council endorse progressing the next business case stage of the Nangus Water Supply Project and that Council requests the Office of Local Government to approve any remaining funds from the project budget be restricted within Council's water fund in consideration so that this invaluable piece of work can progress through to completion. And 4, that Cardno be appointed to undertake the business case for options 2 and 7 as a shared joint venture with Goldenfields County Council, provided a satisfactory quote is received.
Any questions, Councillor Nicholson?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the recommendation as it sits, I feel is a good recommendation. I'd like to compliment Cardno on their very detailed and thorough feasibility study, but I'd like to draw people's attention to page 347 of Cardno's report. Bottom sentence is that there are approximately 27 occupied dwellings in Nangus, and based on the population projections from Council, this may increase to 79 occupied dwellings. So in line with our villages strategy, I believe that this project deserves our full support. My understanding is that this project has been on Council's books for decades, and of course Councillor Graham and McAllister might be able to quantify that, decades for me, but it would be, I think it would be remiss of us not to support this recommendation, and in light of recommendation number 3, I might just ask our General Manager to, I guess, outline the budget figures so it can be going to the Office of Local Government for protected funds, I guess. Thank you. So
the project was funded out of the initial merger money, so $675,000 was earmarked for the Nangus Water Project as a contribution towards the overall potential cost of the scheme, based on some initial cost estimate works that were done at that particular point in time. That $675,000 Council resolved to undertake the path that we've gone down with the feasibility study, and to get the feasibility study done, it cost in the order of, I'm not going to give you an exact figure, I don't have it in front of me, in the order of about $80,000, of which 50% share is met by Goldenfields, 50% through us, and the next phase is likely to cost in the order of $75,000. So in total, with some expenditure from our project manager and all that, we're probably sitting at about $160,000. Goldenfields' contribution would be in the order of 75 for that. So the balance from our initial budget from 675 would be what we would ask the Office of Local Government to allow us to quarantine to have available for that project, should the business case stack up and Council resolves in future to undertake any construction associated with it.
Could I, through the Mayor, could I just ask, in number 4 we talk about business case for option 2 and option 7. And the way I read it, option 7 is do nothing. Why are we getting a business case for option 7?
I mean, the cost is going to be zero. You're just comparing the physical cost of what the cost to do the work is against a baseline of if you do nothing, it's nothing.
I support Councillor Graham's line of thought there that, to my way of thinking, option 7, the status quo, do nothing, is not an option.
So should we be asking them to consider, one of those other options that are there?
No. I believe the feasibility study has indicated which is the best technical solution at the best price to give you the outcome that you want, which is a water supply to the town. So they've gone to that trouble already through the feasibility stage. The next stage is really to work out, okay, how much does it cost? How many connections have we got? How do we, and proceed to more advanced level of cost and benefit discussion for you to consider. Certainly, council, when that work's done, will be in a position to be able to make a decision on how far it progresses, whether it goes to full construction and application for safe and secure fund in the future.
Thank you.
Mr Mayor, should it be that recommendation number 4, that option 7 be removed from that recommendation?
The only problem I see with that is if you remove that, we're committed to doing something. So, and I think that's what the General Manager was just saying, wait for the final costing case and then we can leave it off if we need to then.
I believe this same recommendation was adopted by Goldenfields Water because we're, I guess, partners in getting to that final decision point. Whether Councillor Palmer supports that, I think we've probably reiterated the same words that were heard by Goldenfields County Council.
Yeah, that is correct, Mr General Manager, and I will second the recommendation as printed.
Moved by Councillor Nicholson, seconded by Councillor Palmer. All in favour? Carried. Civil Work.
Item 8.7.2 is the Civil Works and Technical Services Report for March 2020 to be received.
I'd just like, in respect of this report, I'd just like to compliment all the staff that have assisted right across the board in the project. The Adjunbilly Hill was sealed on Saturday. It has come up an absolute treat. They should be very, very proud. And it's quite interesting, last week when I pulled up and spoke to a couple of our employees, Mr Piper, who came across from Snowy Valleys, passed a comment that if that project had been done in Tumut, it would have cost us another $2 to $2.5 million, which just speaks volumes for the quality of our staff to work with the gear they've got and produce results for our ratepayers.
Thanks, Councillor Graham. Yeah, they do a fantastic job. Great team led by Kevin Britt. That's moved by Councillor Stewart, seconded Councillor Palmer. Phillips, all in favour. Carried. I think that might be it.
Mr Mayor, could I just...
Wait, hey. Councillor Bowden?
Yeah, I did just that we commend the staff and their undertakings in the current situation. Everything seems to be going well and there's good feedback from the community. So a vote of thanks to the staff. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bowden. I'm sure that comes from all of us too, but I appreciate that you thought of it and we'll do that. Well, that brings us to the end of the meeting. Just,
Mr Mayor, can I just ask a question?
Yes.
Just given that currently we don't have visual to the Gundagai meeting room, I'm seeking clarification as to, besides Councillor Sheehan, Phillips, Bowden and Stewart in the Cootamundra meeting room, who in Gundagai voted against Councillor Palmer's motion, which I seconded, that would have ensured that if Allura was the successful tenderer for the new waste depot and also an NDIS registered provider, who actually voted against
I voted for it. I voted the names, which will come out in the minutes. I voted for it. Councillor Graham and Councillor Nicholson voted against it.
No worries. Just thank you.
So just before I close, I'd like to, I know it's been a bit of trying circumstances, the way we've done it tonight, but I think it's all worked well, and I'd like to thank the staff for getting it all organised, Linda and Kobe and Mary Ann and whoever in Cooter. I can say it's good. I know you couldn't see us, but the Great Northerns have gone down very well. We only got a dozen to finish off before we go home. But, so once again, thanks everyone, and thanks for putting up with how we had to do it tonight.
Just one comment.
Yeah.
The sound in the workshop was atrocious. The sound for the council meeting was acceptable. So whatever Phil did, he achieved a better outcome for some of us who are hearing impaired.
Right, mate. Well, we'll ask Phil and Katie and Linda what they did, mate. Thank you for that, Dennis.
Finish?